The kettle clicked off and the house exhaled. Steam curled from my mug cinnamon and roast lifting in slow ribbons. I stood in the kitchen in my wool socks, pale light sliding under the back door the week before Christmas, working its way into the bones of the old place. A voice carried from the living room, bright, unbothered, my daughter on speaker. I set the mug down and moved to the doorway. The tree sat unlit in the corner glass ornaments, catching a gray glow. Beyond the arch, Jenna paced in her peacoat phone balanced in her palm. Just leave all 8 with her. She loves it. We will actually sleep for once. Her laugh was soft and careless. She toed the rug with the tip of her boot. Mason already booked the rooms in Newport. Spa, ocean view, the whole thing. We will swing by on the 25th plate, up open gifts, kiss cheeks, and head out. She has nothing else going on. I felt it in my knees first, a small buckle. Coffee trembled inside the cup. I placed it hard on the counter and listened, my breath catching in the warm hush of the kitchen. Daniel and Lauren are in. They have been dying to try that resort. She is a pro. She did last year and the year before. It will be fine. Jenna's voice thinned as she walked toward the front window. Car tires hissed on wet pavement outside. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a snowblower started up. I stayed where I was, my hand flattening against the doorframe. 8 little faces flashed in my mind, their hair damp from bath's pajama cuffs trailing. I stepped back and crossed the hall. The runner rug rasped under my feet. The stairs creaked in their usual places. In the bedroom, the air was cooler, the kind of cold that lives in old plaster. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wardrobe until my eyes blurred. My name is Evelyn Hart, 67, widow for 12 years, mother of 2. My daughter Jenna Clark has 3 children. My son Daniel Reed has 5. I love them in ways that do not fit words. I have also been useful to them in ways that have erased me. The wall opposite the bed was a collage of frames, birthdays, first days, caps tossed into air. There I was in all of them, shoulder inside the frame plate in hand, face turned toward someone else's moment. In one photo, my arm is a blur as I pour gravy. In another, a child is on my hip while I reach to adjust a paper crown on someone else's head. I kept trying to find my own eyes and kept finding the back of my hand. I opened the wardrobe. At the bottom were the bags. Gold paper crinkled, ribbons pressed flat from careful stacking. 8 gifts chosen and rechosen over 3 months. A science kit because Owen likes to take things apart. A green sweater Jenna said Lily would never choose on her own. Books with thick pages for Noah because he still chews the corners. I had receipts tucked like prayer slips. I had marked totals in pencil in the margins of my checkbook. $1,200 from a pension that only stretches if you do not breathe too deep. On the dresser, the catering slip was clipped to a magnet shaped like a lighthouse. Hart Residence Pickup, December 23rd. Turkey sides for 18 pies, sparkling cider, the works. $900 I had moved from savings to my card on a Wednesday morning without telling anyone. I used to think generosity was a language everyone understood, that it translated into something that sounded like care. I closed the wardrobe and went back downstairs. The house had that sound it gets in winter, a soft hum of the fridge, the heating clicking somewhere deep in the walls. The tree still waited. The coffee had gone cold. Last year I roasted 2 birds. The oven ran hot and fogged the windows. Jenna and Mason arrived late and left early. Daniel and Lauren did the same. 8 small bodies stayed with me until midnight. I bathed them in assembly-line, fashion-lined mattresses in the living room, perched on the edge of a chair, while cartoons glowed and sugar made their eyes too bright. I set timers for nebulizers. I reheated potatoes. I carried sleeping kids up the stairs and watched the door close behind the last adult's back like a curtain dropping. The year before that was the same. It smudged together into a single night where the clock read 10 and then 2 and then 5, and the plates were still in the sink. My birthday was in August. I baked a small vanilla cake because habit is a tide. I made coffee and sat at the table with 2 forks and 2 napkins, then put 1 fork away. At 8 o'clock, a message slid across the screen. Happy late birthday, Mom. Today was insane. Love you. I picked up the spare napkin and used it to wipe crumbs. There was the pneumonia 3 winters ago. I called Jenna and she said she would drop soup sometime, then did not. Daniel promised to call later and did not. I propped myself up on pillows and took my own temperature and lined up the pill bottles like a small parade. When the fever finally unlatched its teeth, the house was the same as I had left it. There was the year Daniel needed money. $2,000. He said 3 months. I signed the transfer and called it help. 12 months later, I asked about it and watched his face harden, watched him frame me as a bad mother inside his own head. You are supposed to do these things, Mom. There was also the time Jenna went away for an anniversary trip. 4 days. All 3 kids caught a virus. I timed fevers, took them to urgent care, slept on the floor by the couch. When she came back, she frowned at their faces. They look exhausted. What did you feed them? I walked to the sink and rinsed the cold coffee into a spiral. Water steamed where it met the metal. The kitchen window held my reflection like glass on a dark street. I could not tell if I looked older than yesterday or exactly the same. Maybe the change was not visible anywhere a camera could find it. I pulled a chair out and sat palms flat on the table, wood worn where hands had worried it for years. The clock over the stove muttered to itself. Outside, a delivery truck idled at the curb. The house across the street had net lights that blinked in a pattern I had memorized without meaning to. The world kept doing its small work. I slid the junk drawer open and found a notebook with a floral cover. The pen clicked in my fingers. I watched my own hand hover, surprised by the steadiness of it. I thought of the phrase Jenna had used. She has nothing else going on. I thought of the way her voice had lightened on nothing, how easily my days had been folded into the space where chores live. I did not stand up. I did not pace. I did not talk to the empty room. I put the tip of the pen to paper and wrote a single line in ink that bled slightly into the page. Cancel catering order. I sat and let the words darken. The heat kicked on and the vent under the window sighed. Somewhere on the street, a child shouted and then laughed. I turned to a fresh page and pressed the pen again. I turned to a fresh page. The pen hovered, then moved. Return gifts. The line sat there plain as a door. I rinsed the mug and watched the suds crawl to the drain. The clock over the stove ticked to 8. I picked up the phone and dialed the catering number from the magnet on the fridge. A woman answered with a smile in her voice. Holiday hours, how can I help you? I gave my name. She tapped keys, the soft clatter coming through the line. Hart Residence, pick up on the 23rd, turkey sides, pies, sparkling cider. Are you calling to confirm? I looked at the tree in the corner, still dark. I looked at the empty chairs. I'm calling to cancel. A pause, the sound of a pen touching paper on her end. All of it. All of it, I said. She read a policy. Refund to the card within 5 business days. She wished me a nice day. I set the phone down and let silence return. The house felt larger than it had an hour ago. Not louder. Larger. The hum of the refrigerator. The far click of the heat catching. Pipes thinking to themselves. I stood in the doorway to the living room, and the floorboards cooled my feet through my socks. I put on my coat and scarf and took the bags from the wardrobe. Ribbons brushed my wrist like quiet fish. Outside, the air stung the way it does only in December. My breath rose in small clouds. The sky held a white glare even without sun. The first store opened at 9. I stood under the overhang with 2 other people and watched the automatic doors slide open on a rush of warm air that smelled like plastic and sugar. At customer service, a young woman with glitter on her nails scanned the science kit. Any issue with the item? No, I changed my mind. She nodded and the register beeped. $150 to card. The bicycle took longer. The associate wheeled it out from the back tag, still threaded. He squinted at the receipt, then at me, then at the date stamp. Still within window. Refund to card or store credit? Card. He nodded and taped a new barcode to the box. $200. The doll with the stiff hair and eyelids that clicked. The stack of small shirts with tiny animals on the pockets. Socks rolled into tidy donuts. The train set that smelled faintly of pine and glue. At each counter, the same exchange. Is anything wrong? No. I changed my mind. A card slide, a little printer coughing paper, the bag lighter when I lifted it from the counter. At the third store, a boy about 8 watched over the edge of the cart while his mother signed something. He looked at the doll in my hands and then back at me. That one sleeps, he said. I know, I said. Do you not want it? I smiled. I decided it should go to someone else. He considered that, then nodded as if I had passed some small test. Near noon, I pulled into the church lot on Summer Street. A man in a heavy coat was unloading a van, steam rising from his mouth. The donation bin stood under the awning with a sign that read, Leave what you can, take what you need. The last 2 toys did not have receipts. I set them in the bin and felt a strange lightness under my ribs. Back in the car, I ate an apple and sat while the windshield fogged at the corners. My hands smelled like hand sanitizer and cardboard. In the passenger seat, the notebook lay open, the 2 lines visible. Cancel catering order. Return gifts. I traced the words with my eyes until they blurred. On the drive home, traffic moved like a slow tide. Tires hissed over wet pavement. Headlights carved pale paths through the winter air. I turned the radio on and then off. The house met me with its familiar hush and the faint scent of cinnamon from the morning that felt far away now. I put the empty bags back into the wardrobe, then closed the door gently, like you do when someone is sleeping. The lighthouse magnet held nothing. The fridge held the usual: milk, a container of soup, grapes in a bowl that had seen better afternoons. I made tea and pushed the notebook a little closer on the table. My thumb hovered over my contacts. Paula's name was still where it had always been. We had been friends for 3 decades, the kind of steady friendship that does not need much tending to survive. She had called last week, voice warm, and told me about a small rental on the coast and the way the light fell on the water after 4. I had told her I could not leave. There were things to do. There were people to feed. I pressed the green button. The line rang twice. "Evelyn," she said. What a nice surprise. "Hi," I said. My mouth was dry. "About Christmas?" "Yes." "Is the invitation still open?" "Always," she said. "What changed?" I watched the steam from my tea curl and break. "I heard Jenna this morning." Paula was quiet. Then she said, "I see." "I do not want to talk about it. Not all of it." "You do not have to," she said. "Do you want to come?" "Yes." "Good. I can pick you up on the morning of the 23rd. I let out a breath I did not know I had been keeping. "We will keep it simple," she said. "Comfortable clothes, a book, we can walk or sit or sleep. Whatever you want." "Thank you," I said, and the words sounded small for how much I meant them. After we hung up, I sat still for a long minute. The clock ticked, the heat sighed. Outside, a truck door thumped and a neighbor laughed. I wrote Paula in the margin of the second line and circled it. My phone buzzed on the table. Daniel's name lit up the screen, a message. "We will drop the kids on the 24th at 10. Pick up on the 26th late. Thanks, Mom." I watched the bubbles of his typing and then watched them go away. I set the phone face down. It buzzed again and did not move to pick it up. The silence that followed was clean and bright. I went to the hall closet and took down the small suitcase. The zipper rasped. Inside was the swimsuit I had bought 2 summers ago and never wore. I pressed the fabric to my chin and felt how cool it was. In the bedroom, I opened the bottom drawer and ran my fingers over the soft t-shirts and the cotton pants that dry fast. There was a sweater with a loose neck that smells like cedar because of the blocks my husband used to tuck in drawers. I carried it to the bed and set it there. In the living room, the light had tilted. It slid across the floor and drew a clean rectangle on the rug. Dust hung in it like slow snow. The family photographs on the wall continued to look like they always have. I stood before them and recognized them anyway. My hand on a shoulder, my back to a camera, someone else's smile catching the light. The front steps wore a thin crust of salt. Footprints from the mail carrier had dried there in a pattern of gray smudges. I opened the door and let the cold come in. It moved through the house in a ribbon. I could almost see it. I held the edge of the door and did not step outside. When the kettle sang, I went back to the kitchen, phone face down, notebook open, a pencil line from my knuckle to my wrist, a smudge I had not noticed before. I wrote one more line in the same hand. "Turn off the phone." The switch on the side made a soft click. The room seemed to exhale. I drank the tea and tasted orange peel and clove. The lighthouse magnet reflected a sliver of my face. In it, I looked like a woman who could sit with the quiet. Around 4 headlights paused outside and then moved on. A delivery truck had left a paper envelope at the stoop, a coupon book with red Santa hats printed on the cover. I slid it into the recycling. Light thinned until the rooms took on that late afternoon blue that makes everything look like it is underwater. I turned on a lamp and the shade made a small pool of gold on the table. I took a shower before dinner. Hot water drummed my shoulders and fogged the mirror. When I wiped a circle clear with my palm, my face looked steady. Not harder, not softer, just mine. I put on thick socks and a soft shirt. I sliced an apple and a piece of cheddar and ate at the counter, one bite after another. The phone stayed dark. The house stayed kind. A car door closed somewhere down the block. The radiator ticked as it cooled. The notebook lay open with 3 lines and a small circle beside a name. At the window, I cupped my hands and looked out. The streetlights had clicked on. The net lights across the way blinked their familiar pattern, slow and then fast and then slow again. The sky held no stars under the city glow. In the glass, my reflection floated over the yard like a faint double. I stood there until my breath made a fog on the pane and wiped it away with the side of my hand. When the doorbell finally rang, I did not jump. I turned from the window and walked down the hall, the floor easing under my feet in the places it always does. I touched the cool knob, then opened the door. Jenna stood on the stoop with a grocery sack hanging from her wrist. Juice boxes showed through the thin plastic. Her cheeks were pink from the cold and from the rush. Mason idled at the curb with one hand on the wheel. The engine made a steady hum that pushed against the quiet. I held the door just wide enough. Warm air breathed past my shoulder into the cold. "Hi, Mom. Here, these are for the kids." She lifted the bag and leaned in, already glancing toward the street. "They go through these like water." "Thank you," I said, not taking it. "Can I just set them inside?" "No." She blinked, then tried a small laugh. "I have to run. We are meeting the plumber before we go. I will text you the drop-off time. It should be fine." "I'm not going to be here." Her head tilted. The smile stayed a second too long, then slid away. "What?" "I am not going to be here for Christmas." She shifted the bag from one hand to the other. Salt dusted the toes of her boots. Her eyes went quick, searching my face for a joke I was not telling. "What are you talking about?" I held the edge of the door and did not move. "I heard you this morning." Her mouth opened, then closed. The bag rustled. "You were listening to my private call?" "You were standing in my living room." Her jaw tightened. "It is just a few days. You love having them. You always say you do." "I love them. That is true. I do not love being decided for." Mason tapped the horn once, a polite sound, then looked away when I lifted my eyes. Jenna shifted again, impatience twitching in her fingers. "What do you want then, Mom? Do you want us to pay you? Is that what this is?" I thought of the catering slip that was no longer on the fridge. I thought of the returned toys and the church bin under the awning. "I canceled the food." She blinked. "You what?" "I returned the gifts." For a second, she looked like a child again, the way she used to when a rule she had forgotten suddenly mattered. Then the flush rose high on her neck. "You cannot do that. The kids are expecting presents. We already told them." "You told them I would do what I always do." She took a step closer. Her voice dropped. "You are overreacting. You are making this bigger than it is. It has been this big for a long time." She reached into her coat and pulled out her phone. Her thumb flicked, and Daniel's name appeared on the screen before she turned it and hit call. She held the phone toward me like a badge. "He will explain." The line clicked, and then Daniel's voice came sleep rough around the edges. "Hey, what is going on?" I kept my hand on the door. Jenna lifted the phone between us like a third person. "She is saying she's not doing Christmas, Daniel." "Mom?" "Yes." "Tell me this is a misunderstanding." The net lights across the street worked through their slow pattern. A neighbor's dog barked once and fell quiet. My breath made a thin cloud in the hall. "It is not." There was a small silence while he recalibrated. "Okay, we will adjust. Just hold the kids here until we get back from check-in. We cannot cancel now. It is non-refundable. Take your kids with you." "You are not serious." "I am." "Mom, be reasonable." "I'm not available." Jenna's fingers tightened around the phone. She leaned in, voice sharpened. "You are punishing us. For what? For having lives. For needing a break. That is normal." I did not say it was not. I said it is not mine to carry. Daniel's voice came in more controlled. "We have plans. People are counting on us. The kids are excited. We told them about your tree. The tree is dark." "Why are you doing this?" "Because I am done being an assumption." Jenna set the grocery sack on the porch rail, the plastic sighing as it settled. She let out a small, quick breath that fogged and vanished. Her eyes shone in a way that used to pull me forward without thinking. I did not move. "You always say we can count on you," she said. "You always count on me. That is not the same thing." "This is cruel," Daniel said. "Dad would never have allowed this." Heat moved up the back of my neck. I kept my voice even. "Do not bring your father into this." Jenna looked toward the car. Mason had both hands on the wheel again, face turned away, posture still. She looked back. "Fine, go ahead, do whatever this is, but do not expect us to pretend it did not happen." "I am not asking you to pretend anything." She stared at me a beat longer, then lifted the phone and turned away. "I cannot talk to her when she is like this," she said to Daniel, her voice slipping to the side and then snapping back. She tucked the phone under her hair and walked down the steps. The bag stayed where she had set it. Mason popped the lock and she climbed in coat, flattening against the seat. The car pulled away. Exhaust hung in the cold and then unraveled. I stood with my hand on the door and watched the taillights bend around the corner. The quiet that followed had a texture. The house took it in. I lifted the grocery sack from the rail and carried it to the kitchen. Juice boxes clicked softly against one another in the bag. I set it by the back door. The kettle's narrow whistle threaded the air, and I took it off the burner before the sound rose all the way. In the sink, a little chain of water ran along the edge and dropped into the drain. I watched it disappear and then turned the handle a fraction. The flame under the pot steadied to a patient blue. In the living room, the tree reflected a faint window shape on the floor. I sat in the chair by the window where the light falls best in the afternoon. My heart was still beating too fast. I placed a hand flat against my chest and felt it slow. When the phone rang again, its screen lit like a small bright fish on the table. I had turned it back on out of habit without thinking. Daniel's name repeated, then Lauren's, then a number I did not know. I watched it until the glass went black again. The silence that followed felt like clean linen pulled tight over a bed. I wrote a small note in the margin of the list without adding a new line. The ink had no trouble finding the paper. At 3, the light tilted, and the net lights across the street began their pattern earlier than usual. I stood and stretched my shoulder, clicking softly in the joint. I drew the curtain 2 inches to the side and looked at the neighbor's maple, its branches black against the pale. By habit, I reached for the photo frame on the shelf nearest the door. It was the family portrait from 4 years ago. My fingers hesitated on the glass. The dust on the top edge left a faint mark on my skin. I set the frame down and did not look for a cloth. The doorbell rang again. 1 clean note. I went down the hall and opened the door. Daniel stood on the steps with his hands shoved into his coat pockets. He had not shaved. Behind him, a rideshare idled, heat pluming from the vents. He lifted his chin in a motion that used to mean Mom fixed this. Now it read as something else. He looked past me into the quiet house. Can I come in? I did not move aside. That depends on what you are here to say. His eyes came back to me. He looked older than he had on the screen. Fine lines at the corners. A tiredness that did not feel performative. He swallowed the sound small in the cold. I came to listen. I held the door a moment longer. The warm air moved around my shoulder into the cold and kept moving a ribbon I could have almost touched. I stepped back and let him in. He stepped inside and closed the door with his heel careful like a guest. Snow damp clung to his coat. The rideshare idled at the curb exhaust, lifting in a loose ribbon past the front window. We stood a beat in the hall, the heat held to the ceiling, thin and steady. Daniel looked toward the living room, then to the kitchen, then back to me. Can we sit? I led him to the table. The lighthouse magnet on the fridge reflected a sliver of the room. The notebook sat open where I had left it. He noticed it, and then pretended he had not. He pulled out a chair and sat with his hands flat. The skin across his knuckles was dry and a little cracked. He looked like he had not slept. I am here, he said. Say what you need to say. I poured water into the kettle and set it on the burner. The click and flare of blue steadied me. You and Jenna decided my holiday without me. He stared at a spot near the salt shaker. We assumed. We did. You told your children before you spoke to me. He rubbed his jaw and nodded once. We did. Steam started to lift in a pale thread. It has been like this a long time, I said. He exhaled through his nose. I know you have done a lot. We are grateful even if it does not always look like it. The kettle climbed toward a low whisper. I turned it off before the sound built. He watched my hand on the handle. I set 2 mugs on the table and tilted the pot. Tea leaves rolled in the strainer like small fish. Grateful is not the same as careful. He nodded, then shook his head, then stopped moving at all. I am here to ask what you want. Say it so I can hear it. He wrapped his fingers around the mug and did not drink. The heat left a fog on his lashes. Ask me, I said. Do not assign me. Ask and accept my answer. Do not put my name on plans before my consent. Do not drop 8 children at my door and call it love. If I agree to help, it is help. It has terms and time and an end. I will not fund what you choose not to plan for. His throat moved. He said nothing. When I was sick 3 winters ago, I said, I called. He closed his eyes once. I know. When I turned 65, I know. When you needed $2,000? His eyes opened. He did not look away. I was wrong, he said, about the money, about all of it, probably. I told myself we were all just surviving, and that made it fine. It did not. The smell of orange peel rose from the tea. The tree in the living room kept its soft silhouette. Outside, a plow passed at the end of the block and left a wet scrape behind. Do not bring your father into this again, I said. He is not here to speak for me. I can do that myself. He kept his hands around the mug. His voice dropped into the space between us. I am sorry. The words landed without fanfare, no music, no tilt of light, just the sound of them in this room. I hear you, I said. He breathed in and out as if he had been holding it a while. We still cannot cancel Newport, he said. That is a fact. If you cannot take them, we will find another way. I do not know what that is yet. I came to ask you face to face and not on a screen that makes it too easy to be a coward. Thank you for coming. He gave a small, crooked smile, a flash of the boy he had been. Then it was gone. What about after, he said, not the trip. After, what does this look like? My eye went to the notebook before I could stop it. He followed the glance, then looked back up and waited. I will choose. Sometimes I will say yes. Often I will say no. I will not explain either. You will not ask me for money. If I bring food, it is a gift, not a requirement. If I watch the children, you will pick them up when you say you will. If you forget me, I will not chase you." He nodded very slowly as if committing it to a place he would not misplace. "Can I say something you will not like?" "You can say it." He set the mug down. It left a circle on the table that bled outward and then held. "Amanda will not take this well. I am aware." He stared at the grain of the wood, as if reading something there. "She says things when she is scared. She will say them to hurt and only think about what they mean later. It is not an excuse." "It is not." He lifted the mug again and took a sip. He winced at the heat and swallowed. "I called you this morning and I was already on Jenna's side," he said. "On the side of convenience. That is what it was. Not family. Convenience. I'm trying to move away from that." The radiator ticked in the wall. The house held the quiet. "You can start now," I said. "Take care of your children. Tell them the truth in a way that does not make me into a story I'm not. Jenna can tell hers. That is not my work." He nodded. He rubbed his thumb along the mug's rim round and round, leaving a faint wet path. "Do you want me to go?" he said. "I can go. You can finish your tea." We drank. The heat loosened something small behind my ribs. He looked at the tree. "You did not plug in the lights this year." "No." He looked away from the tree and directly at me. "If I had called in August, would this be different?" "It is December," I said. He looked down and let out a small breath that did not quite turn into a laugh. "There." I stood and rinsed the mugs. He pushed his chair back and stood too. The rideshare outside idled steady patient. He zipped his coat and then unzipped it again as if the action would make a sentence for him. "I will handle our end," he said. "I will speak to Jenna. I will not ask you again for this week. I will come back when you say to." I walked him to the door. He hesitated with his hand on the knob. "Can I hug you?" "You can." He put his arms around me. Not a lean, not a collapse. Just a measure of pressure that said he had a body, and so did I. He stepped back and cleared his throat. He opened the door. Cold came in and lifted the hair on my arms. He stepped onto the stoop, turned once as if to say one more thing, then did not. He went down the steps and got into the waiting car. The driver looked at me in the side mirror and then looked away. I closed the door and leaned my forehead against it for a second. The wood was cool and smelled faintly of paint. The house received me without comment. In the kitchen, the notebook lay open. The ink had dried. I touched the corner of the page and felt the paper's tooth. The doorbell rang. A quick, sharp press, then a second, a third. The bell kept its rhythm. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to the hall. Cold pressed through the seams of the door. Amanda stood there with her coat open, hair tucked behind one ear, eyes sharp from not enough sleep. Snow freckles clung to her scarf. Behind her, a rideshare rolled past and a neighbor pulled a trash bin over salt. "You did not answer my calls," she said. I held the door where it was. Warm air moved past my shoulder in a thin draft. "I know." She stepped closer toes to the mat. Her gaze flicked over my shoulder into the quiet behind me. Her jaw worked once. "So that is it. You are canceling Christmas for 8 kids because you are mad at me." "I did not cancel anything for them. You can make a holiday anywhere you stand. You are their mother." She laughed once, a short sound that wanted to be something else. "You are unbelievable. You live for this. You love this. You told me you did. I love them. I do not love being assigned." She lifted a hand and dropped it. "What do you want me to say? I'm sorry you heard me. I'm sorry I thought you would help your own family. Is that what you want?" "I want you to ask and then accept the answer." She shifted her weight and the wood of the step creaked. Her eyes were bright now. "You cannot do this to me. We have plans. We put money down. The kids have been counting days. Your plans do not belong to me." She reached for the door as if to open it wider. I did not move my hand. Her fingers touched the edge of the wood, then withdrew. "You are being cruel," she said. "Dad would have been ashamed of this. Do not use your father." Her mouth flattened. For a beat, we only heard the street. The net lights across the way made their pattern slow, and then fast, and then slow again. Amanda pulled in a breath that lifted her shoulders. "You have always said we could count on you. You can count on me to tell you the truth." Her throat worked. She did not look away. "Fine. Keep your truth. We told the kids they would see your tree. We told them they would sleep on the floor and eat pie and watch movies on your couch. I had to stand there and tell them that Grandma decided she had better things to do. You could tell them I chose to rest. You could tell them I love them." She shook her head. "That is not how this works. It is how it works for me." She stared past me again into the quiet hallway, the lamp throwing its small pool of gold on the table. Her voice dropped. "Do you even think about me, about how hard this is?" I did not answer that. I watched the cold carry a ribbon of vapor from her mouth into the air and disappear. She put her hand to her forehead and dragged it down her face. You know what? No, I am not having this conversation while you are doing this thing. We will talk when you are reasonable. She took a step back on the stoop. Her boot heel scraped salt. Do not expect me to make this easy for you. I'm not asking you to make it anything at all. She looked at me a last long second. The look held years I knew by heart. Then she turned and went down the steps. The car door opened and closed. The engine lifted. Taillights washed red across the snow and were gone. I stood with my hand on the knob until the metal cooled my palm. The house held the quiet without strain. In the kitchen, the notebook waited where it always waits. The ink on the last line had dried. The lighthouse magnet reflected a slice of lamp. The grocery sack by the back door rustled when I moved past it and then settled. I picked up the small suitcase from the bedroom floor. The zipper ran clean from corner to corner. I set it by the front door and sat to lace my boots. The laces were a little stiff from last winter. When I stood, the hall seemed wider. The morning took its time and then arrived. Light crept over the roofs and pooled in the street. The bell rang and did not hurry. I opened the door. Paula stood on the stoop with her sunglasses pushed up in her hair and a cooler bag slung over one shoulder. Her smile found my face and held it. Ready, she said. I nodded and handed her the suitcase. It felt lighter than it should have. She carried it to the car and set it in the trunk. The trunk shut with a clean sound. I turned back to the hallway. The lamp was off. The tree sat in the corner, unlit the glass, catching blue morning. I touched the lighthouse magnet and left it where it was. I locked the door and pressed the knob to check it. In the chill, the key clicked in the lock like a small bell. My breath made a white cloud that lifted, broke, and was gone. I walked to the curb. The air held that clean December sting. Paula opened the passenger door and I slid in. The heater softened the cold at my knees. The seat fabric was warm from sun. Paula handed me a travel cup. Tea this time, orange and clove. The steam curled and woke the scent in my hands. Okay, she said. Okay. We pulled away. The tires hissed over the salted street. The net lights across the way blinked through the last of the morning. Houses slid by in a calm parade. The neighborhood opened to the road and the road took us. I watched the mirror and saw the front windows of my house shrink, and then turn to a small square of light among other small squares. Snow dust rose from the curb and drifted down. Inside the car, the radio played low strings and a piano that did not ask for anything. I cupped the warm lid between my palms. The notebook lay by my knee where I had put it. The 3 lines were visible even with the cover closed. Outside, winter sat on fields and roofs and fence rails. Inside, air and heat and breath found an easy rhythm. My shoulders dropped one notch lower. The lighthouse on the magnet stayed behind on the fridge. In my head, it still threw its thin beam over dark water and glass. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.